Denise was lying on the bed, her clothes scattered haphazardly on the floor. The image of her fiancé, Chad Derry, appeared in her mind. He was everything she dreamed of in a man. Kind, loving, loyal, and a great lover. His only flaw was that he wasn't there for her at that moment. Above her, the image changed from the groom to the man she met 3 weeks ago. Ray West hovered over her, his lips full and soft, his blue eyes so clear and bright. He was a man who knew what he wanted, and she wanted him. She wanted him to make her his woman. Her eyes opened, and she came to her senses. Guilt pierced her mind. How could she fantasize about Ree when she was in love with Chad? When did you get engaged to Chad? She shuddered inside. She always considered herself a one-man woman. She would never change. But is it considered cheating to fantasize? Is it considered cheating to just dream? He was as tall as Chad, broad-shouldered and muscular, although not as broad and muscular as her fiancé. Both men were similar in height, but their personalities were completely different. Chad was kind, sincere, and loving. Ray was strong, confident, and charismatic. She met Ray when the company he worked for bought Simtech software. She worked for Simtech as a customer contact person. Her job was to maintain contact with existing clients, making sure that they are satisfied with the product and services. She was assigned to the Fort Worth beef account and met Ray. She was always able to maintain a professional relationship with clients, but with Ray it was different. Every time she was with him, she felt her face flush. She curled up into a fetal position and tears flowed from her eyes. How could she do this to Chad? She hated herself. She told herself over and over again that this is not who she is. She's just infatuated with Ray, it'll pass soon. She didn't really want to have sex with him. She wanted to be faithful to Chad. Chad was the man of her dreams. He was reliable, loving, caring. Ray was just a hobby. That's all. After a while, she forced herself to get out of bed and get dressed in jeans and a t-shirt. It was after 7, and she was hungry. Her sister, Carla, was sitting on the couch, eating a slice of pizza when Denise left the room. Carla gave her a sly smile. "Did you have fun?" "Oh, shut up." Denise felt herself blush. "So who is Ray?" Denise stopped. She forced her face to remain calm, even though her heart was pounding. "A guy I met at work. It was easy." Carla winked at her and laughed. "Calm down, Denise. Everyone has a hobby. This is fine. Just don't say the wrong name when Chad has sex with you. I know from experience how awkward it can be." "You little bitch." Denise put her hands on her hips and stared at her sister. "So where is Chad? You've always been inseparable, and now you're on your own. What happened, doll?" Carla turned on the couch to get a better view of Denise. "He had to work today. Something happened at the factory yesterday. He said it felt bad, like someone might get hurt. He and his team are fixing everything today." "Crap. It sucks to work on Saturday. Are you still going out tonight?" "No, Chad said it would be late." Denise took a slice of pizza and took a bite. She wasn't hot anymore, but she was still fine, as good as it gets for a frozen pizza. After swallowing the bite, she looked at her sister. Carla was wearing sweatpants and a t-shirt. No makeup and unkempt hair completed the look of someone just relaxing. "And you?" "No, Mike left me." Carla didn't seem too upset, but she usually switched boyfriends pretty quickly. "Did he leave you?" Denise asked. Usually, it was Carla who dumped the guy. "Yeah, well, he caught me having sex with his friend Jerry." She shrugged. "I mean, it wasn't like I was serious about Jerry, for God's sake. I was just having fun." "God, Carla, you are such a girl of easy virtue." This comes from a girl who was only fantasizing about a man she just met. "You know I would never cheat on Chad." "Is it true? Chad is not here. Do you want me to call this Ray and invite him? Maybe he'll want sex with 2 hot sisters." Denise blushed brightly again. The thought of Ray here with her gave her a burning sensation in her stomach that felt so good. "You are sick." She turned and left the living room before her sister noticed that she was worried. On Monday at work, Denise focused on her work. She made calls, researched a few issues, talked to the software engineering manager to find solutions to problems. Just a normal day. At about 3 o'clock in the afternoon, Ray West called, and as soon as she heard his voice, she felt her desire blossom. "Good afternoon, Denise. Like the smartest account manager I've ever met," Ray said in greeting. His rich, deep voice stirred desires within her that she struggled to suppress. "I need to discuss some issues regarding the grinding control application." "Of course, Ray, speak up." Denise tried her best, but managed to maintain a professional tone. "Well, actually, Denny's, I would prefer to meet you if you don't mind." "Of course, Ray. Do you want me to come to your office?" Denise felt the blood rush to her cheeks, imagining meeting him again. "In fact of the matter, I'll be out of town all week and won't be back until Friday night. I was hoping you could meet after 6 on Friday. I know it's a lot to ask, but I need answers to my Sander setup questions by Monday." "After 6?" Denise asked. She wasn't sure she could be alone with Ray outside of a work environment. "I know it's an inconvenience. Let me buy you dinner. We can discuss business over food." Fort Worth Beef purchased a complete set of machine control software and was an important new customer. Keeping them happy was vital, especially since Daltech was taking away many of their customers and new sales. Denise still hesitated, but then nodded to herself. She has to do this for the company. She just needed to keep her childhood hobbies under control. "Of course, Ray. Where would you like to meet? How about Dusty's Steakhouse, say 6:30 on a Friday? I'll book a table so I don't have to wait long." "Great. If you have the opportunity, please email me your questions, and I will try to have all the answers ready." "Thank you, Denny's. You're the best. See you Friday night." After she hung up, Denise sat back. Her breathing was a little ragged, and her face felt flushed. "Pull yourself together, girl," she told herself firmly. "This is not a date. It's just a business meeting. I'm not cheating on Chad. I'm not cheating." With this thought, she dialed her fiancé's number. Chad is in touch. Her fiancé sounded a little tired on the other end of the line. "Hello, love," she whispered into the phone. "Oh, hi, beautiful." His voice perked up noticeably. "Sorry, I couldn't see you over the weekend." "What happened, Chad? You just said it was an accident." "The damn seal on the blender burst in the middle of the job and sprayed dirt all over the floor. If any of the operators had been in the wrong place, it could have been very bad. We cleaned everything up and fixed the car, but now I have to figure out what happened. Gaskets should not fail 3 days after inspection." "I'm so sorry, Chad. The reason I'm calling is because I have something that came up. One of our clients wants to meet me on Friday evening. I know we were planning to go see your parents on Friday after work, but can I reschedule that?" "Are you meeting a client on Friday night?" "Yes, he will be out of town all week, but he has questions about setting up our software. He'd like to discuss them over dinner." "Understand." Denise heard the tension in his voice. "This is not a date, Chad. You trust me, don't you? It's just a business meeting." "Business meeting with a man over dinner." "Don't be jealous, Chad. Do you want to come with us? I'm sure Ray won't mind. It will be boring. We will only talk about software settings, but you can come." Chad sighed. "No, honey, I can't. I promised my mother that I would come on Friday evening. They are getting older and Dad needs help with the ranch. I have to go. Plus, Becky will be heartbroken if she doesn't get to see her grandma." They planned to take Chad's 9-year-old daughter, Becky, to Chad's parents in Weatherford that weekend. Denise dated and loved Chad's parents, but the prospect of driving an hour and a half after work on a Friday didn't particularly appeal to her. She was surprised that dinner with Ray made her so excited. "I'm so sorry, Chad. I'll make up for it next week." "It's okay, Denise. I better finish this. Jack is standing in my doorway." The phone went silent on its end, and Denise put the receiver on the hook. Deep in her soul, she felt guilty. She wasn't able to see Chad over the weekend, and now she's canceled for a business meeting. She still refused to consider this a date. On Wednesday, Chad picked her up for dinner and took her to her favorite restaurant, a small Italian place run by two old bachelors. After they ordered, they sat down and started talking. "Are we okay, Denise?" Chad asked once the waiter was far enough away. "Certainly." Denise smiled tightly. "Why do you ask?" He shrugged. "Don't know. Probably just nerves. You know, I didn't see you over the weekend. There were problems at the plant." His voice faded, his eyes searching for her. "And I meet a man after work to discuss business." Denise leaned forward and took his hands in hers. "Chad, you are the man I want. You are the man I am marrying in 4 months. You are the man I want to spend my whole life with, madly in love. Ray is charming, but he's not you, and dinner with him isn't a date, it's work. I told you on our first date that I'm a one-man woman. I meant it then, and I mean it now. I will not cheat on you or lie to you." She took a deep breath. "You told me about your ex-wife, and I understand that you can't just forget about it. But I'm not her. We've been dating for over a year. We both committed to each other. You asked me to marry you, and I agreed. Along with this, there must be a certain amount of trust. Do you trust me, Chad?" Chad leaned back, his eyes never leaving hers. After a moment, he nodded and then smiled. "I trust you, Denise. You're right, of course. I'm just acting stupid. You mean a lot to me, and Becky just adores you. I guess I'm just nervous because I don't want to lose you." "I don't want to lose you either, Chad. I love you, and I love Becky too. By the way, where is the little hooligan tonight?" Sandy sits with her. They're probably playing Candyland or watching a cooking show. It's Wednesday, so I think Crafty Kitchen might be on tonight. "I think it's so funny that Becky loves cooking shows," Denise said, still holding Chad's hands. "Yeah, she's becoming a real good cook too. On Monday, she cooked lasagna. She was amazing." The rest of the dinner went well. Both of them relaxed, talking about all sorts of trifles. By the time their bill arrived, Denise felt a warm sensation in her center. After Chad paid the bill, they walked out arm in arm and smiled at each other. In Chad's car, Denise moved to the center and pressed herself close to her man. "Take me to your place, Chad. I want to spend the night with you." Chad looked at her, and she saw love in his eyes. Almost stopping at a traffic light, he looked at her and smiled. "Denise, you are so beautiful." "Flattery will get you far, mister." He reached out and hugged her, holding her tightly. She pressed herself against his chest, inhaling the mixture of his cologne and his masculine scent. They drove to his house, stopping next to the Buick. "Wow, Sandy drives a Buick." She smiled at the thought. Inside, Denise went to freshen up, and when she returned to the living room, she saw Sandy talking quietly to Chad. "Chad, you might not be able to save him this time." Sandy put her hand on his arm and looked at him with sad eyes. Chad nodded and then noticed Denise. His face went from sad to loving in an instant, and he gave her a warm smile. Sandy immediately removed her hand from his arm and took a step back. Turning to Denise, the older woman smiled at her. "Everything is fine?" Denise asked, taking a step towards her fiancé. "Now, yes?" Chad hugged her and kissed her briefly on the lips, then turned to Sandy, still holding Denise tenderly. "Thanks for looking out for Becky. I can't tell you how grateful I am to you for this." Sandy smiled, her wrinkled face glowing with pleasure. "Oh, she's always so well behaved." Turning to Denise, Sandy continued, "And she just adores you, Denise." "She is already sleeping?" Denise asked, smiling. She, too, was very attached to Chad's 9-year-old daughter. "Yes, I put her to bed right after the end of Devious Kitchen about half an hour ago. I think it's time for me to go home, too." Sandy put on her coat. She refused to take the money Chad offered her and kissed him on the cheek before leaving. At the door, she winked at Denise and then left. Chad wrapped his arms around Denise, holding her tenderly. She raised her head, inviting him to kiss. After a few minutes, Chad pulled away from her. "I better check on Becky." He smiled at her. Disappointed, but not wanting to show it, Denise smiled at him and watched him disappear down the hallway towards her daughter's room. He was a good father, a good man, and a good lover. Her heart filled with love. Heading into Chad's bedroom, then into the master bathroom, she took off her blouse and brushed her teeth. When she finished, she looked in the mirror and saw Chad standing in the doorway, watching her. She smiled at him in the mirror and received a smile in return. "Are you watching me brush my teeth?" she asked, turning and leaning on the sink. "Yes, you're so beautiful." She laughed. "Let's go to bed and you can worship me in all my beauty." This time he laughed, deep and rich. "I'll be right there." He went to the closet and took his toothbrush. She smiled at him, winked, and left the bathroom. She finished undressing and found one of her nightgowns in his dresser. She spent enough nights here to have everything she needed. After putting on her nightgown, she lay down on the bed, striking a pose that she hoped was seductive. A few seconds later, Chad came out of the bathroom. He was wearing only his shorts, leaving his muscular torso, shoulders, and arms bare. A wide smile grew on his face as she smiled at him. "Oh my God, Denise, you look heavenly." He approached the bed. "You look good too, handsome. Come here." Denise patted the bed next to her. "You are so gorgeous. Do you know how much I love you?" He smiled at her. "Yes, I know. I love you too, Chad." They made love. She wanted to laugh and cry at the same time. She loved this man so much that it hurt her. Never in her life had she had someone who loved her so clearly. Never, she swore, would she do anything to hurt this man. They lay together for some time. Denise, satisfied, loved, and tired, smiled, looking at her man from behind his hand. Chad's arm was wrapped around her, his massive bicep serving as her pillow. None of them spoke. There was no need for words. What they just shared was too precious for words. "Let's clean ourselves up and go to bed." Chad's deep voice interrupted her thoughts. She nodded and slowly untangled herself from him to sit up. Looking down at him, she smiled. He smiled back. She glanced at the clock next to the bed. They made love for more than 2 hours. No wonder she was so tired. On Friday morning, Denise looked in her closet. She wouldn't have time to go home and change before her meeting with Ray, and she needed to choose an outfit that looked good, but also said it was just a business meeting. She settled on a black knee-length skirt and a white button-down blouse. Appropriate black shoes completed the look. Her sister shook her head as Denise walked through the house. "What?" Denise felt unsure. "Chad must be an amazing lover if you go to meet Ray looking like that. You look like a teacher from the 60s. FYI, Chad is truly an amazing lover, and I don't want Ray to get the wrong impression." Denise looked at her clothes. She was very simple. Carla looked her up and down. "Are you even wearing granny panties? You know, you're clearly showing Ray that you have feelings for him, and it's turning into overzealousness." Denise blushed at her sister's comment. In fact, she wore plain white high-waisted briefs. She glanced at her sister. "So what do you think I should wear?" "Let's watch. We have time before you go to work." The two sisters went back to Denise's closet and finally settled on a tight mid-thigh skirt, charcoal stockings, a bright yellow pleated blouse with a low-cut neckline that showed about an inch of Denise's cleavage. 2-inch black heels completed the outfit, giving her a smart and sexy business look, but nothing over the top. She looked at herself in the mirror and wondered if it was too sexy, but when she thought about how Ray would look at her, she smiled. Let him be jealous, she thought. I belong to Chad. She had been receiving compliments on her outfit all day at work, and one of her closest friends, a quiet young woman named Elaine, even asked if she had a date that evening. Denise simply smiled and said no. Around 2 o'clock in the afternoon, Ray called. He just wanted to let her know that he was boarding a plane in Phoenix so he could meet her as planned. His voice on the phone made her head spin, but she quickly reminded herself of Wednesday evening. She will never cheat on Chad. She spent the rest of the day making sure that she is ready to meet Ray. She double and then triple-checked her answers to his short list of questions. She even thought about what he was trying to achieve and tried to anticipate other questions he might ask to make sure she had answers to them too. Her work kept her attention, and before she knew it, the clock struck 5:30. She stuffed all the materials she had collected for the day into her leather bag and took a deep breath. "You can do this, girl," she said out loud, then looked around to make sure no one had heard her. The office was empty, and she smiled shyly. Taking another deep breath, she focused on Chad and the night they spent together. Moving purposefully slowly, she walked towards the elevator, trying to think about work. It was important to her that Ray not notice her excitement and not get the wrong impression. She stopped. She needed to pull herself together. She tried to calm her breathing and keep her thoughts under control as she rode the elevator down to the garage and headed to her car. She had enough time to drive across town to Dusty's Steakhouse by 6:30. The drive was boring but uneventful, and she managed to keep her thoughts off Ray and Chad the entire time. Rush hour contributed to this. She parked the car and sat for a while, trying to calm her shaking hands. Gathering her courage, she took her bag and headed towards the door. Inside, the maitre d' hotel took her name and immediately escorted her to the table. Ray hadn't arrived yet, but she arrived a little earlier. Dusty's Steakhouse was a very sophisticated place. The soft light illuminated the expensive and tasteful artwork on the walls. Their table was for two, barely big enough to accommodate their two dishes, and was in a secluded alcove. A small brass candelabra hung above the table, creating a romantic atmosphere. The waiter, a young man, impeccably groomed and dressed in a perfectly fitting restaurant suit, approached with a bottle of expensive red wine. After pouring her a glass, he placed the bottle on the table and asked if she wanted anything else while she waited. She smiled and said, "No, thank you," just as Ray walked up to the table. "You look amazing, Denise," Ray said, moving closer. He was wearing khaki pants, a light blue shirt, a khaki jacket, and a red and blue tie. She stood up and extended her hand to shake hands, but instead he raised her hand to his lips and kissed it tenderly. Gracefully, his eyes never left hers, and she could only hope he didn't notice her reaction. "How are you traveling?" she asked as they both sat down. "Great. I went there to buy 2 large tanning vats and managed to cut the price by almost half. All I had to do was promise to buy 2 more within 2 years, which is what we had planned anyway." He smiled widely, but that's nothing compared to going back and having dinner with the best account manager anyone could ask for. Denise smiled at him, enjoying the flattery. "I have the answers to your questions right here." She reached for her bag, but Ray put his hand on her arm to stop her. The light touch made her heart beat faster. "It will wait until we place the order. This way we won't be interrupted." As if ordered, the waiter appeared. He poured Ray a glass of wine and then asked if they would like an appetizer. Ray looked at Denise with a mischievous expression on his face. "Would you like to try Suzette's oysters? This is one of their best dishes." Denise looked at Ray. His boyish smile made her smile. God, he was so devilishly attractive and oozed confidence. "Sure, sounds great." She had never tried oysters Suzette, but loved baked oysters. The slight hint of sexual innuendo did not escape her, but she did not want to seem overly strict before starting a business conversation. Ray ordered from the waiter and winked at him. Denise pretended not to notice, but inside she felt amused. Is Ray planning to seduce her tonight? Despite her body's reaction, she knew his attempts would be in vain. She belonged to Chad and would never do anything to hurt him. "So, what do you do in your free time?" Ray asked as soon as the waiter left. Well, lately all I've been doing is planning a wedding." So, she thought, this should cool him down a little. On Face Yard, a wide smile blossomed and his eyes lit up. "Congratulations! I didn't know you were getting married. When is the wedding day?" "In 4 months. My mom is going crazy. She hired a wedding planner and has already made an appointment at the bridal salon for me to look at the dresses." Ray's smile didn't fade for a moment. "This is amazing. I'm happy for you, but I'm jealous of the lucky guy who managed to get you." "Thank you." His compliment made her smile. Ray reached out and touched her hand. "Can I see the ring?" Certainly. Denise felt a certain spark when he touched her. She didn't want this man to see how he affected her. Pretending it didn't matter, she held out her left hand so he could see the ring. It wasn't the biggest she'd ever seen, but with a 2-carat solitaire, it was big enough to satisfy her. "Wow," Ray's eyes widened. "It's almost as beautiful as you." He smiled at her. "And that says a lot." Blushing brightly and hoping that her body would stop reacting this way to everything Ray said, Denise removed her hand. "Should we talk about business while we wait for the snack?" she suggested, reaching for her bag. "Certainly." Ray leaned back, his eyes looking intently at her. They talked about business, and she gave him answers to all his questions. During the conversation, the waiter came over and took their order, and by the time the oysters arrived, she had answered all his questions. After putting away the papers and promising to send him all the information on Monday morning, she sat back, feeling that the evening had gone well. She was confident that Ray was pleased with their software and level of service. "What do you do in your free time?" she asked him, changing the topic of conversation. "Well, my wife and I and some friends are going to the Air Supply concert next Saturday. We love concerts, parties, barbecues, basically any excuse to get together and have fun." Ray smiled at her, his eyes looking intently at her. For some reason, Denise felt disappointed that he had a wife. It was stupid, she belonged to Chad, but the feeling of disappointment persisted, even though she hid it behind her smile. "I love Air Supply. I tried to buy tickets for them, but they sold out the same day they went on sale." "Yes, believe it or not, I was only able to get tickets because a guy my wife knows left us 4 tickets. "You are lucky." She tried her best to keep a smile on her face. Ray's face became serious. "I would love to invite you and your fiancé, but we have already invited Claire and her next boyfriend." Denise felt like she was missing something, but she was still struggling with her disappointment that Ray was married and didn't think much of it. During dinner, they talked about music, books, and even art. She and Ray shared many interests, and that really amazed her. Finally, dinner came to an end. Despite her infatuation, Denise discovered that she really liked Ray. She hated to admit it, but if he weren't married, she might be tempted. When the bill was paid, they went out to the parking lot. Ray insisted on walking her to the car, which Denise thought was sweet but a little stupid. She got from the car to the restaurant without any problems. At her car, she turned to thank Ray and found him standing right in front of her. He reached out and gently stroked her cheek. "Denise, I really enjoyed this evening." He said this softly, looking into her eyes. The touch of his hand on her cheek was electrifying, sending shivers of passion through her body. She knew she had to stop him. She knew she had to look away, but she didn't do it. They kissed. She suddenly realized what she was doing and quickly pushed Ray away. "I can't." She exhaled. "God, how I want to, but I can't." "Your fiancé?" Ray asked, still keeping her at a distance. "Yes. Aren't you worried about your wife?" Ray smiled at her. "My wife and I understand that we are not cut out for monogamy." "Are you switching partners?" "We are not monogamous. We have an open marriage. We love each other deeply, and I would do anything for her. We are committed to each other, but we also understand that we can be committed to each other and love others." Denise shook her head. "That's not how it works. You can't be committed to someone and sleep with someone else at the same time." "Why not, Denise?" "No, don't answer. I don't want to ruin what we shared this evening. If that's not what you want, I won't force you." He let her go and took a step back. "Think about it, though. Ask yourself the question why. Question the limiting rules that have been taught to you for so long. Once you have the answers, you will know yourself better. It doesn't matter whether you agree with me or not. It's important that you know why you believe what you believe." He turned and walked away a few steps, then turned around. "I'll talk to you on Monday. I hope this wonderful thing we shared tonight will not affect our business relationship." She just nodded. Her breathing was still ragged and her heart was still racing. She almost cheated on Chad. Her head was spinning as she watched Ray leave. A feeling of guilt tormented her, causing her to tremble. She opened the car with trembling hands and tried to start it. By the time she pulled out of the parking lot, tears were streaming down her face. She was still crying when she arrived at the house. How could she let Ray seduce her? How will she look Chad in the eyes now? Even as a child, she promised herself that she would never change. What she promised Chad over and over again, she broke. Well, they didn't go far, just a kiss and a touch, but that was too much. Running into the house, she went straight to her room and threw herself on the bed, giving free rein to her tears. She felt dirty, but she didn't blame Ray. She herself had been sending the wrong signals all evening. She accepted his compliments, touched his arm and shoulder, and smiled at him. Hell, she practically threw herself on his neck all evening. She didn't blame Ray, she blamed herself. The door to her room opened, and her sister sat quietly on the edge of the bed. Carla didn't say anything, just sat there. Denise rolled over and looked at her sister. "I screwed up, Carla." Carla nodded but didn't say anything. "I let him kiss me, and I kissed him back. I thought I was so strong." "This is all?" Denise looked at her sister. "This is not enough?" "But you stopped." "Yes, still." "It's okay. You didn't cheat on Chad. You could have been tempted. You could have given in, but you didn't. You're still as pure as the snowflake you always were. Don't ruin what you have with Chad by admitting to him something that didn't happen. Can you hear me? I know, I haven't changed, but nothing. Have you told Ray you're engaged?" "Yes, he is married, but he and his wife have an open relationship." Carla pursed her lips. "So he just assumed you and Chad were too?" "Well, I was flirting with him." Denise shook her head. "Men," Carla gasped. Denise smiled at her sister. Carla was 2 years younger than her, but in many ways she was more experienced than Denise. She nodded and reached for a napkin to wipe away her tears. "God, I must look terrible." "Men will do it with you." "It wasn't Ray's fault. I teased him and flirted with him all evening. No wonder he thought he could kiss me. Hell, I wanted him to kiss me myself. God, Carla, you know what it's like to want something forbidden so badly." "Yes, I know, big sister. But unlike you, I wouldn't stop until I had sex with him." "God, Carla, you're so bad." Denise immediately regretted her words. "Sorry, that sounded so dirty." "That's because I am dirty." Carla grinned. "Is it bad that I'm also worried that he'll be angry that I said no?" Denise asked softly. "I need a Fort Worth beef account, and I could have ruined everything by flirting with Ray and then turning him down." Carla shrugged. "If he is angry, he will survive. You didn't lie to him. He knew you were engaged." She leaned over and hugged Denise. "Now change into comfortable clothes. We'll watch stupid romantic comedies all night and sleep until noon. This is the best way to forget that we did something we regret." On Sunday afternoon, Chad called Denise. His voice sounded tense. "I'm on my way home. Mom will come with me to take care of Becky. Sorry, Denise, but I'll be working a lot of overtime in the next couple of weeks." "Is everything okay, Chad?" Denise asked, concerned. She had never heard Chad so tense. "Do you remember the blender accident at work a while ago? Well, during the night shift on Saturday, our sander jammed. The bearing has failed. This caused a huge problem, and we lost almost 1,000 pounds of beef. I have to figure out what's going on and fix it." "I'm sorry, Chad. Does anything need to be done?" "No, Mom is doing a great job with Becky. We just have to finish here. I promise I will compensate you when everything is settled." "Love you, Chad." And she really loved him. He was everything she wanted in a man, loyal, kind, and loving. And he was a great lover. Every time they were together, it was magical. After they hung up, Denise sat and looked at the phone. She stopped it with Ray. She passed the test. Now she could move forward, knowing that she could be faithful to Chad throughout her life. She took a deep breath and forced herself to smile. Nodding to herself, she curled up on the couch. She can be faithful to Chad. She will be faithful to Chad. She came to work early on Monday morning, and by 8 o'clock in the morning, she had sent Ray all the information he had requested. The morning was filled with meetings and phone calls to clients, as well as dealing with a few minor emergencies that always happen on a Monday morning. At about 2 o'clock in the afternoon, Tara, the company's receptionist, called her, asking her to come to the main hall. There was a beautiful bouquet of yellow tulips at the reception desk. The card read, "Thank you. The answers you gave me allowed me to impress the board of directors. Here's the start of a wonderful business relationship. Ray West, Fort Worth Beef." Tara smiled at her. "Someone's a fan of yours." She didn't read the card. "This is from Fort Worth Beef. They are happy with our software. They must be very pleased to send flowers." Tara winked at her. Denise blushed, but before she could respond, her boss, Darren Davis, appeared around the corner. "Denise," he called, "can you come to my office?" He turned and disappeared down the corridor. Oh well, it felt good for at least a few seconds. Denise sighed and Tara laughed. As she closed the door to Darren's office, Denise felt her heart clench. Darren was usually an unpleasant person. He expected all subordinates to do whatever it took to satisfy a client, and Denise wondered which of her clients was unhappy enough to call him. He pointed to the chair. "Sit down, Denise." He waited until she sat down, and then a smile appeared on his face. "I just got a call from Mike Gibbs from Fort Worth Beef." Mike Gibbs was chairman of the meatpacking plant's board of directors. "He just wanted to thank us for our excellent customer service. According to him, their account manager exceeded all expectations, making sure that the software and hardware we sold them worked correctly, and they couldn't be more pleased. Mike even said he would recommend Simtech to other companies looking for such services." He leaned back, still smiling. "Good job, Denise." She was shocked. In 4 years of working with Darren, he never said "good job" to her. The praise made Denise blush and smile like a schoolgirl. "Thank you, sir. I know this is an important client." "No." Darren shook his head. "Thank you. You have an excellent reputation. You know how to work with difficult clients and make them happy. That's why you were trusted with the Fort Worth Beef account. You made me proud. I also spoke with their nutrition research manager, Ray West." Denise's heart sank. What did Ray tell him? He probably didn't mention the kiss. Darren paused and looked at her before continuing. "He couldn't praise you enough for your preparation and the accuracy of your answers. He even said that you answered questions he didn't have yet, which was a huge help. Overall, they are very pleased not only with our products, but also with what they say is an exceptional level of support and customer service." Denise felt the air leave her lungs and realized she had been holding her breath. Ray obviously wasn't angry about her refusal. It made her feel better. "Oh, one more thing. Ray West and Bob Sims are coming here on Wednesday. They want a demonstration of our line of large protein analyzers. I want you to give a demonstration. Contact the engineering department and get everything ready." Denise nodded. She had only demonstrated the protein analyzer once, but she knew she could do it. That night she called Chad before going to bed. His voice sounded tired as he answered his cell phone. "Chad," he said simply. "Hello, darling," Denise whispered into the phone. "Oh, hi, Denise." He paused, and she heard him move the phone. "What's wrong, honey?" "I just wanted to talk. Do you have a minute?" Denise was disappointed with his reaction. He seemed distracted. "Well, I'm still at work, but of course I always have time for you." "Are you still at work?" "Honey, it's already 10:30. "Oh shit, really?" "Chad, what's going on? I know there was an accident and you said some equipment broke, but why are you still at work?" Chad sighed heavily. "It's bad, Denise. Do you remember Billy Lumbar? The guy who got married last year?" "Yes, he. 6 weeks ago, he caught his wife with another man. This hit him hard. I gave him a week off to sort it out and thought he and his wife had it all sorted out." And what does this have to do with your later work? Well, I think he was more distracted than I thought. He's the mechanic who had to replace the seals on the blender. It turned out that he was very mistaken, and the accident with the blender was his fault. He is also the one who did the maintenance on the grinding machine. He missed a worn bearing and didn't lubricate everything properly. The problem with the grinder is also his fault. There were other problems before this. Jack wants me to fire him, but Billy can't stand it now. I'm here checking out all of his work for the last 2 months. I've already found other equipment that could fail because of it. I'm sorry, Chad. Denise didn't know what to say. She knew Chad well enough to know that he would work until exhaustion to save the young man's job. Good luck to you tonight. Do not worry, everything will be all right. Thank you, Denny's. I love you. I'm sorry I couldn't see you today. It's okay, love. Is Becky okay? Do you need anything from me? Yes, Becky is having a great time with her mom. I think we'll work it out. I'll just finish here and go home. I promise I will compensate you when everything is settled. Love you too, honey. Take care of yourself. Let me know if you need anything. On Wednesday, she felt upset. At work, she was ready for a demonstration, and when the 2 men arrived, she greeted them and led them into the demonstration room. The demonstration went flawlessly, and both Darren and Ray were smiling by the end. The demonstration, it turned out, was to convince Bob Sims of the need to update their analyzers. The ones the Fort Worth Beef Lab had were already outdated, and they were planning an upgrade. This would have been an order of about $2 million to replace the 30 analyzers they had. Bob and Darren went to Darren's office to discuss the deal, leaving Yard and Denise alone. You did a great demonstration, Denise. Ray smiled at her. I knew it would happen. Thank you, Ray, and thanks for the flowers. They are gorgeous. Same as you. He touched her hand, looking straight into her eyes. She didn't flinch away from his touch or stop him, even though the little voice in her head urged her to do so. He moved a little closer, and she could smell his cologne. Denise, I don't want you to feel awkward around me, Ray said softly. She smiled at him. Without realizing it, her other hand rested on his chest. I'm not embarrassed, Ray. Her heart was racing and his touch was electrifying. I'm glad you're not mad at me. He smiled at her. I could never be angry with you. He placed his hand on his chest, holding it gently. Oh, I just remembered. Claire's friend won't be able to come to the concert on Saturday. This means we have an extra ticket. You're the only Air Supply fan I know. Will you come with us? Will your wife be there? Yes, and our friend Claire. Denise thought about it. She should have asked Chad first, but she really wanted to see the Air Supply concert, and this might be her last chance. The band isn't getting any younger, and who knows when they'll decide to retire. If Ray's wife and girlfriend are there, it will be safe, right? Finally, she smiled at Ray. I'd love to go, Ray. What time does it start? The concert starts at 8, but we usually stop by for a pre-concert snack. We'll pick you up around 6. Denise felt excitement flare up inside her. She was going to see the Air Supply concert. She convinced herself that the excitement had nothing to do with spending more time with Ray. Nodding, she took half a step closer to him, almost pressing herself against him. This is wonderful. I cannot wait. They kissed again. She needed him. Not a single thought about the groom entered her head. Finally, after long moments, the thought of what she was doing and where she was doing it crept into her mind. Pulling away, she sighed. We can't, not here. Someone might see. Ray stepped back, smiled at her, and nodded. See you on Saturday. Turning, he walked out of the display room. She was immediately overcome with guilt. What did she just do? Why was she so helpless around this man? She didn't love him. It was just love. So why couldn't she resist him? She touched up her makeup using the CD from her purse and rushed back to the office. Closing the door, she called her mother. If anyone knew how to help her, it was her mother. After talking with her mother about nothing, she finally gathered her courage. Mom, I need to talk to you about something serious. Can I come over tonight? Of course, dear. I'll take your father away for a while so we can be alone. Apparently, her mother heard the seriousness in her voice. However, she didn't pry any further. Denise was almost crying when she hung up. She spent the next 30 minutes trying to pull herself together, and just when she felt like she could function again, her phone rang. "We got a sale," Darren almost screamed. "You did it, Denise. We got the sale. All this is $2.1 million. Great job. You may have just single-handedly saved this company. We still have some contract work to do, but Bob was very impressed with the equipment and with you." She knew it would be an exaggeration to say that she saved the company, but Denise still felt proud that she had done a good job and they had gotten the sale. The satisfaction of her job battled the guilt she felt about kissing Ray again. She felt even more guilty because, by breaking the kiss, she made it clear that she would have continued kissing him under different circumstances, and she knew she would do so. That night, she sat on her mother's couch with her hands in her lap. Mom brought her a cup of coffee and sat next to her. "Okay, Snow White, what's upsetting my fair princess's fairy tale? Did Chad do something?" Snow White is an old nickname given to her by her parents. Her father once remarked that she was as pure as Snow White, and it stuck. It didn't help that she really did look like a fairy tale princess. Neither mother nor Chad. Denise was close to tears again. "Oh, Mom, last week I kissed another man, and today I saw him again, and we kissed again." Her mother nodded slowly. "So my little Snow White is not so pure after all. Oh, baby, everyone goes through it. I remember the first time I cheated on your father. I felt terrible for weeks." "Have you cheated on your dad?" Denise's eyes widened. "Repeatedly. Well, I think more than a few. He also had his own affairs. We are people, Denise. That happens. Tell me, do you love Chad?" Denise stared at her mother. She always believed that her mom and dad had an ideal relationship. Her mother couldn't have shocked her more if she had hit her. "Well, darling, what about you?" "What should I do, Mom? Do you love Chad?" "Yes, I love him so much. If he found out about Ray, I would die." "Ray kissed you?" "Yes." Denise lowered her eyes. "Do you love Ray?" Denise shook her head. "No, that's what madness is. I'm just madly in love with him, but he's married." Grace, Denise's mother, looked at her, her face expressionless. "Does his wife know about you?" Denise shrugged. "I don't know. He says they have an open marriage. He invited me to go to a concert with him on Saturday. His wife and another friend will come with us." Grace nodded. "You kissed him twice and then agreed to go to the concert with him. It doesn't look like you're struggling very much with this crush." "Yes, Mom. Yes, it's true. I'm just losing the fight." "How many times have you had fun thinking about him?" Denise was shocked by this question. "Mother?" "Anyway, how many times?" "I don't know, a few. How did you know I was doing this?" Grace rolled her eyes. "Everyone does it. It's not a big secret. So, you were excited by the thought of this man. You kissed him and agreed to go on a date with him. Are you going to have sex with him?" Denise's world was in ruins. Everything she thought she knew was crumbling around her. Her mother and father's ideal relationship was not ideal. She couldn't resist the temptation of Ray and her mother. Instead of judging her and correcting her, she acted almost as if everything was fine. She was so factual about everything Denise told her. Tears streamed down her face, and she sobbed. Her mother grabbed a napkin and leaned forward. "I'm so sorry, Princess. Come here." Mom took her in her arms and hugged her close. "Everything is fine. Let me tell you a story." Grace wiped Denise's tears with a tissue and then pulled Denise closer to rest her daughter's head on her chest. "Your father asked me to marry him when I was 22. I was young and had only had about a dozen lovers before him. 6 months after we got married, I met an older gentleman. He was so charming and I was seduced by him." "Did your father know?" "Yes, I told him after 6 months of continuing my affair with Gerald. Like I said, I felt guilty. At first your father was not happy about this, but we discussed everything. I loved Frank and didn't want to lose him, but I loved Gerald and didn't want to lose what I had with him. After a while, Frank and Gerald became friends. Denise pulled away from her mother. I never knew. Gerald died when you were only 3 years old. Heart attack at age 52. Grace's eyes reflected the pain she felt at the memory. And Dad didn't object to you having an affair. He understood. Besides, he also had his own things to do. Do you remember Nancy Yates? Yes, Denise squeezed out the word. She and your father have been close for several years. When she became pregnant, she decided to settle down and ended the affair. Frank has always been honest with me about this. We've both had others over the years. When I told Frank you need to talk to me alone, he called his latest mistress Rachel Wimsley, and they're on a date today. I'm sure he'll have sex with her before he gets back home. And that suits you. That doesn't mean he doesn't love me. After all these years, I know what love is. Just because you kiss Ray doesn't mean you don't love Chad. Listen to your heart. You still love him. I see it in your eyes when you talk about him, and when I see you together. But you need to be honest with him. I can't, Mom. Denise shook her head. His ex-wife cheated on him, and it hurt him deeply. On our first date, I told him that I was a one-man woman and demanded that he be a one-woman man. And now I'm destroying everything. Tears flowed from her eyes again. This is not who I want to be, Mom. This is not who I want to be. Well, you always have a choice, but I think you underestimate yourself. You've always dreamed of fairy tales, but they don't exist in the real world. Both men and women can love more than one person at a time. Moreover, they need love and intimacy, and sometimes they need it with multiple people. Oh, I know why you think that. Our idiotic society thrives on lies. People constantly preach that monogamy is right, while they cheat on the side. It amazes me how many hypocrites there have been and are in the world since the beginning of time. Denise shook her head. Everything was not going at all as she expected. Talk to Chad. He deserves your honesty. If he can't handle it, then he's not the man you should marry. Because if he is honest, he will understand that someday he too will fail. You may find that he is more open to it than you think. But what if not? What if he calls off the wedding? What if he hates me? I dated Chad. He is a good man. I don't know what he'll do when you talk to him, but he deserves to know. You deserve to be happy too. Denise considered her mother's words. Now was not the right time to have this conversation with Chad. He was so stressed at work. She didn't want to add more to it. Finally, she nodded. She'll talk to Chad, but not until things calm down at his job. Thank you, Mom. Does Carla know about your affairs? Yes, honey, but I told her not to tell you. It may have been wrong of me, but I didn't want my Snow White to know that her mother was not what she seemed. Your sister was always a wild one, and she needed to know that it was normal. Denise nodded. So what should I do on Saturday? It depends on you. I'll say go and enjoy the concert, and if the opportunity arises, receive pleasure and sleep with Ray. Mother, I'm serious. Even if you decide not to tell Chad, if you deny yourself, you will grow resentment within yourself, and it will ultimately destroy your love. Besides, once you sleep with Ray, you may realize that it only deepened your love for Chad. I'm not going to sleep with Ray. I just won't. I can't do this to Chad. He's such a good person, and I love him. Denise shook her head. Then why are you here, Princess? Denise left her mother with a lot on her mind. Mom didn't say what she expected. On the contrary, she said the exact opposite. Denise wasn't sure what her mother told her. This shook her idea of an ideal marriage. It was obvious that the parents still loved each other. She saw it every time she looked at them together. The way they looked at each other, held hands, and kissed. All this showed how much they loved and were devoted to each other. But they both had other lovers. Mom accepted this as the norm, and obviously Father too. But can Chad? She slept fitfully that night, dreams of Ray and Chad filling her night. The next day at work, she was called to the reception desk again. This time, the flowers were a dozen red roses, and she felt a little panicked when she saw them. Ray shouldn't have sent flowers like that, but he didn't send it. They were from Chad. "I'm sorry I couldn't spend time with you. I love you so much. Chad," the card read. Taking a deep breath of the scent of beautiful roses, Denise smiled. Tara looked at her with a sly smile. "Two men are sending you flowers. You're a lucky girl." She rested her chin on her hands and looked dreamily at Denise. "Oh, shut up. The yellow ones were from Fort Worth beef. And these," she said, picking up the roses and deeply inhaling their scent, "are from the love of my life." Tara grinned at her. "If you say so." The receptionist winked at Denise. Denise blushed and took the flowers to her table, placing them next to the still fresh bouquet that Ray had given her. A few minutes later, her cell phone rang. It was Chad. "Hello, love. Thank you for the flowers," Denise whispered into the phone. "Hi, dear. Did you like them?" Chad's voice sounded so tired that Denise immediately felt sorry for him. "They are beautiful. How are you? Did you manage to sort out Billy's problem?" "Yes. By the way, I just called to tell you that I won't be able to make our date tonight." Denise forgot they were planning to go out tonight. With everything that was going on, it had slipped her mind. "It's okay, Chad. I understand." Denise took a deep breath and decided to immediately tell Chad about Saturday. Chad, I was invited to a concert on Saturday night. This is Air Supply." "About." There was a pause. "Who invited you?" Denise took another deep breath. "Ray West, that guy from Fort Worth beef. His wife and another friend are coming too. This friend's boyfriend said no, so they had an extra ticket and invited me." She said it in one breath. Chad was silent for a few moments. "I know how much you love Air Supply. Enjoy the concert. I still work on Saturday nights." "I love you, Chad. Sorry you have so much work to do." "I love you too, Denise. Listen, we'll talk again on Sunday. Maybe we can go out for a late lunch or something." "I'd love to, Chad." Saturday arrived and Denise slept late. She woke up and ate a light brunch with Carla. Carla had a new boyfriend she really liked, and Denise listened to her sister rave about him. Her thoughts were not in the conversation. She presented the concert. She hoped they would play "The One That You Love" because it was her favorite song. She imagined Russell Hitchcock singing in his beautiful voice. She lazily spent time at home until 3 o'clock in the afternoon and then began to get ready. She took a long bath and applied lots of lotion, all the while thinking about Chad. She hoped he was okay. He sounded so tired on Wednesday. She hurriedly finished her bath, dried off, did her hair, and put on some makeup. Then she went to her closet. Carla came in to help her choose an outfit, and together they began looking through her wardrobe. "Do you have anything that's not so boring?" Carla asked, holding a floor-length paisley skirt in her hands. "What about this?" Denise took out a short denim skirt. It ended about midway through her thighs. "Better. It's a shame I don't have time to shorten it by 3 inches." Carla threw her skirt on the bed. "Wait, I won't wear this," Denise laughed. "You will. It will look good with this." Carla lifted her halter blouse. "You're going to an 80s band concert, so wear 80s style. It will be great." "I don't want Ray to see me in this. I'll just wear jeans and a t-shirt. It will fit and won't send the wrong message." "I thought you wanted to sleep with him." "No, I absolutely don't want to sleep with him. God, Carla, you're just like Mom." "Oh, and what did Mom tell you? Come on, tell me, big sister." Denise pulled a pair of jeans off the rack and threw them on the bed. These were her tightest jeans, and she really looked good in them. She told me that she had affairs, and that Dad did too. "Boring. This is old news. Did she tell you about their wild parties?" "Mom and Dad don't throw wild parties." "Are you sure?" "Carla, you're crazy. Mom is 52, Dad is 54. They don't throw wild parties." Carla looked at her with a sly smile. Okay, I won't ruin your illusions anymore. She winked at Denise. You're terrible. Which t-shirt should I wear? Carla lifted an old Air Supply t-shirt to her waist. It was the only Air Supply t-shirt she owned. Come on, you have to put it on. Carla grinned. Okay, now come out so I can get dressed. Denise sent Carla away. I'm going on a date with Todd tonight, so I won't be home, Carla said from the doorway. So if you're lucky, you'll have the whole house to yourself. Carla winked and closed the door. The jeans were low-rise, and with a short t-shirt that didn't cover anything below her breasts. She didn't want anyone to see her panties, so she chose a very low thong in a pretty pink color. A matching bra was also included. After she put on jeans and a t-shirt, she looked at herself in the mirror and smiled. She really looked good. She took out comfortable sneakers. She had been to concerts before and knew she wanted to wear comfortable shoes. It was almost 6 when the doorbell rang. Denise opened the door and saw Ray. He was wearing tight black jeans and a red and blue Air Supply World Tour t-shirt. There was a black Escalade in the driveway, and she saw a woman with spiky platinum hair in the driver's seat. Are you ready? Ray asked, smiling at her. His eyes quickly scanned her outfit, then returned to her eyes. I like your outfit. Thank you, Ray. I really appreciate you inviting me. Ray took her hand, and they walked to the car. As they walked past the front of the SUV, she noticed that a small woman with short brown hair was sitting in the front passenger seat. Compared to the larger platinum blonde, she seemed tiny. Ray opened the back door and let her in. She climbed inside and slid into the seat behind the driver. Denise, this is my wife, Jill. The driver turned around and smiled at her. Ray has talked so much about you. I'm glad you joined us. Thank you. I love Air Supply, and I'm really excited to see the concert. Denise smiled at the woman. And this is Claire, our little wild thing, Ray said, and the brunette smiled warmly at her, clearly looking Denise up and down. You look tasty enough to eat. I understand why Ray is so into you. I could easily fall in love with you too. Claire laughed. Be good, Claire. We just met her. You don't want to scare her. Jill scolded the brunette. Denise had to laugh, wondering what she had gotten herself into. Ray put his hand on hers. His touch worried her much more than she would have liked. Don't pay attention to them. They're just joking. Isn't that right, girls? Clearoak grinned at Ray and smiled at Denise. We always joke, Ray. You know it. Claire licked her lips and winked at Denise as Jill pulled out of the driveway. They drove through Irving until they reached Crystal's Bar and Grill. The trip was mostly uneventful, although Ray held her hand the entire way and Claire and Jill made sexually charged comments at every opportunity. In the parking lot, they all got out of the SUV. Outside the car, Denise saw for the first time what the other two women were wearing. Jill wore skinny blue jeans with several stylish rips at the hips. She wore a tight t-shirt with a picture of Dee Snider screaming on the front and the Twisted Sister logo on the back. The outfit was good for a concert, but Claire's clothes surprised Denise. The tiny woman wore a ripped top that clearly showed off her black bra and only went up to her breasts. Below, she had a short skirt that barely covered her groin. Her stomach was completely exposed, showing off her beautiful diamond piercings. Claire grabbed one of Denise's hands and Ray held the other as they entered the bar. They sat at a high table in the bar, with Jill across from Denise. Sitting, Denise glanced at Claire. Her skirt rose up enough that Denise could clearly see coke in her thong. So Denise, Ray has told me so much about you. I'm really glad you were able to come to the concert tonight. I wanted to know the woman my husband fantasizes about. Jill grinned and leaned forward. Denise was stunned. Ray told his wife that he fantasized about her. She looked at Ray, not knowing what to say. This made Jill laugh. It's okay, Denise. Jill winked. It doesn't bother me that Ray plays with other women. He told you that we have an open relationship, right? Denise nodded, a little dazed. So, you really don't mind? Claire leaned closer to Denise. I can tell you from experience that Ray is divine. You, Denise turned her head sharply to look at Claire. And he, her head turned back to Ray. He smiled like a schoolboy. Denise suddenly felt doubtful. Ray was married to this incredibly sexy woman and slept with a wild little minion next to her. He probably didn't even want her. Ray put his hand on hers again, but this time Kohler caught her attention. Denise looked at Coke and then at Jill. And is this really okay with you? Why should I not be okay, Denise? I don't own Ray any more than he owns me. Her face became serious for a moment. But Ray says you're engaged. We won't do anything you don't want. Jill threw a stern look at her husband. Really, Ray? I have never forced any woman, Ray said. You know it. I know, Ray, but I also know how convincing you can be. How hard it is sometimes to resist you. Jill turned to Denise. Whatever happens tonight is up to you, and we'll all still be friends tomorrow, no matter what happens or doesn't happen. Claire leaned towards her again. But I'd like to play with you, if you're curious. Denise looked at her with wide eyes. Claire, is the tiny woman joking? She watched as Claire's tongue slipped out and licked her lips, and then Coke laughed and leaned back. Jill laughed too. Ray simply shook his head. Don't worry, Denise. They are harmless. Is it true? Ray squeezed her hand gently, giving her a warm smile. That smile was so beautiful. Warm, inviting. She smiled at him and leaned slightly towards him. He squeezed her hand again, and she placed her other hand on top of his. Looking at Jill, her smile disappeared as she realized what she was doing. Sorry, Jill. Denise pulled away from Ray. Jill laughed, her eyes sparkling. Don't be sorry, Denise. I like to see Ray happy, and I like to see you making him happy. Are you really okay with this? Jill leaned forward. Denise, I know this may be hard to understand, but yes, I am okay with my husband holding another woman's hand. I'm okay with him kissing you. It's okay for me if he makes love to you. I want him to be happy and enjoy life. Wow, Denise shook her head. I don't know if I could do that. I think if I saw Chad with another woman, I would be jealous. Why should I be jealous? Jill smiled. If Ray makes love to you with my permission, why should he leave me for you? Since I don't stop him from being with you or punish him for it, what motivation does he have to leave me? The blonde's face became serious. On the other hand, if Ray wants you and I'm jealous or angry or punishing him for something so natural, why should he stay with me? She paused, letting her words sink in Denise's mind. Denise shook her head. But you don't want him to be devoted to you. Don't you want to know that he will always be with you? Jill smiled. I know it. Ray and I are deeply in love. Just because he loves another person doesn't change that. When the going gets tough, and sometimes they do get tough, I know Ray will be there. When my grandmother died, he was there. I remember crying on his shoulder, and he just held me. She looked at Ray with love in her eyes. He is a wonderful husband. I know for sure that if I told him not to see you or any of his lovers again, he would do it. But I also know how much it would hurt him. I never want to hurt him. Jill put her hand on Ray's leg. The key is honesty. If Ray ever started hiding things from me, then I would start to worry. In any relationship, honesty is key, but in an open relationship, it is even more critical. Do you have other lovers too? Denise asked, her hand on Ray again. Jill leaned forward. Of course I have. I'm a very sexy woman and not just for men. She winked at Denise. I have several boyfriends and girlfriends. I never hid it from Ray. I enjoy watching her with others, both men and women. Ray rubbed her hand gently. But to me, it's more than just sexy. I love knowing that my partner is a free spirit who enjoys life and lives it to the fullest. I would never keep her in a cage. How can I say I love her if I don't let her live the life she wants? Denise nodded, accepting everything that was said. It went against what she had believed for years, but she doubted that her beliefs were not based on lies. Her mother's revelation that her parents had an open relationship shook her to the core. came up and took their drink orders. Jill looked him up and down openly as he stood next to her. They sat and talked, and the conversation turned to the concert, and then to other bands that the group liked. It turned out that Jill and Denise had the same musical tastes. Both loved the slow, soft rock of the early 80s, as well as some lesser-known rock artists. By the time they paid the bill and headed to the concert, Denise had begun to see Jill and Claire as friends. Their tickets to the show placed them directly above the mosh pit. There was a wide aisle in front of their seats, giving them room to stand and move without getting crowded. The opening band was a rough rock band from Boston, and they were happy when she finished her set and Air Supply took the stage. The entire crowd was on their feet as the band began with All Out of Love. By the time they performed the third song, Making Love Out of Nothing at All, Ray was standing behind her, his arm around her waist and gently rocking her to the beat of the music. Turning in his arms, she kissed him, not thinking that his wife was standing next to her. "I want you today," Ray whispered in her ear between songs. "I want you too," she answered him hoarsely. The music and Ray hugging her made her heart race. Denise was both disappointed and excited when the group left the stage. When the lights came on and the crowd began to leave the hall, Claire walked up to them from the mosh pit, holding the young man's hand. Denise didn't even notice she was gone. "Can we give Jeremy a ride home?" Claire smiled as she approached them. Jill smiled at the young man. "Certainly." She winked at Claire. "Does he know what awaits him?" "He should know, so he needs transportation home." Denise didn't understand. "Sorry, what?" "Oh, he'll get his." Claire laughed, then added, "He was on a double date, but his girlfriend got angry and told him to find his own transportation home." "Well, we have enough space." Jill looked down at him. "Do you think you can handle 2 women tonight?" "I'm sure I can," he said, his southern accent sounding particularly strong. Jill hugged him and kissed him. "Don't worry, we'll make this a night to remember," Jill said as she pulled away. In the car, Coke and Jeremy climbed into the back seat. Ray sat in the middle, Jill drove, and Denise was in the front passenger seat. Jill laughed when she caught Denise, returned back and looked. Unfortunately, the dark interior of the SUV prevented her from seeing much. When they arrived at her house, Denise got out. Ray leaned forward and whispered something to Jill, then walked Denise to the door. "What did you say to Jill?" Denise asked, looking at him with a sparkle in her eyes. She wanted him to stay the night, but she wasn't sure that would happen. "I told her that if you invite me, she can go home. I'll find a way to get there tomorrow." Ray smiled at her. Denise smiled at him and then waved to the SUV. "Do you want a cup of coffee?" She opened the door, smiling at him. As the door closed behind them, Denise heard Jill pull out of the driveway. She smiled at Ray and led him into the living room. They kissed. Ray smiled at her. "I don't really want coffee." "Me too." Denise took his hand and led him to her bedroom. Conflicting emotions raged inside her. Passion, desire, fear, and a small grain of guilt fought for supremacy. They made love. "I liked it." He smiled back. "Me too, Denise. You are an amazing woman. I would never have expected this from you." "Why not, Ray? Did you think I didn't enjoy sex?" "No, not like this." He shrugged. "I just didn't expect you to do it so well. Sometimes people are not what they seem. Sometimes they just need to come out of their shell." "You never cease to amaze me, Denise. You are smart, kind, beautiful, and loving." She smiled at his compliments. "And you are a handsome scoundrel and a seducer of good women." "Have I corrupted you?" "Oh yeah, I was completely corrupted by your charms." "Is this really what you want, Denise?" The worry in Ray's eyes returned. "Yes." She made a serious expression on her face. "I would never be happy if I didn't do this. I would always remember this evening and wonder what could have been. I don't want to regret my life." "And you won't regret it?" "I hope not. I believe Chad may be open to this lifestyle. On our first date, he told me that he had just dated a woman who welcomed partner swapping. He seemed like she had almost convinced him. She might have convinced him if his wife had not left their daughter to him at that moment. I just need to make him understand that this won't hurt his daughter. If you're open to it, I have friends who can help convince him. Women are friends, I guess. She smiled at him. The names are Jill and Claire. Actually, I was thinking about a woman named Lillian Melendez. If there is anyone who can make a man use his brains, it's her. Well, I can no longer object to him being with another woman. She won't steal it from me, will she? No, she is married and happily married. She just had her baby about 3 months ago, but she already looks great. It was amazing. Not better than with Chad, but different and wonderful. She knew she wouldn't stop seeing Ray, but she desperately didn't want to lose Chad. She will have to find a way. She will find a way. We're having a party next Friday night. I would really like you to come. Ray smiled at her. It's a party for adults, isn't it? Denise asked, turning to him. Yes. Do you think you can convince your fiancé to come? Hope. With her passion for Ray growing, Denise began to worry again about how she could get Chad to accept it. So will you come? I wouldn't miss this for the world, Ray. I'll be there with or without Chad. Chad sat on his couch, playing with his wedding ring in his hand. The large 2-carat diamond reflected the light from the window as he spun it. Beside him, his daughter Becky chatted non-stop. Sandy had just brought her back from a walk they'd gone on so Chad could have lunch with Denise. They haven't seen each other for almost 3 weeks. Billy screwed up big time and Chad had to work hard to get him out of trouble. Now that it is over, life could return to normal. He planned to have a quick lunch and then return home and make wild, passionate love with his fiancée. But everything went wrong. So I just can't decide if I like Hunter or Jack. I think I like both. His 9-year-old daughter spoke next to him. Chad wasn't paying much attention. His heart was broken into dark pieces, and the pain in his chest did not go away. Denise cheated on him, and then she expected him to just accept it and start doing it with her. He was offered this lifestyle before he started dating Denise, and he refused. She knew it. Why did she think he would accept it now? He had a daughter to raise. He couldn't refuse this. Dad, can... Chad wasn't paying attention. Can I do something, honey? Can girls kiss boys? The question took him by surprise. She saw him kiss Denise. Is this the point? Of course you can, honey. Fine. His daughter seemed to have made up her mind. I'll go make some cakes. Okay, honey. Chad watched as his daughter skipped into the kitchen. She grew up so quickly. Perhaps a cake is just what he needs right now. At that moment, his phone rang. He looked at the screen and was surprised to see the name Lillian Melendez. Chad sighed and accepted the call, not quite sure why she was calling. Hi, Lillian. Hi, Chad. I need to talk to you. Are you busy? No, not really, he replied, still playing with the ring in his hand. I know this is unexpected, but can I come over? It is important. Certainly. Come in. Chad felt a little nervous. Lillian was a longtime friend, and he knew she wouldn't bother him without a good reason. When Lillian arrived, Chad noticed her serious expression. She sat down on the sofa next to him and began to talk. Chad, I need to talk to you about Denise. He tensed, expecting the worst. I know what you're going through. I was also in this situation. But I want you to know that you have a choice. I want to help you figure this out. Chad listened to her words, feeling his heart soften a little. Maybe there was a way to maintain his love for Denise despite everything. And he was ready to listen to Lillian's advice, hoping that it would help him find a path to understanding and happiness. Subscribe to our channel so that your love doesn't cheat on you, and go ahead and listen to the next story, because this story is nothing compared to the next one. If you're under 18, don't even think. Click to the next one. Click to the next one. Click to the next one. Click to the next one.